Right now, BBC Sport is in a form slump akin to Derby's one-win Premier League season. The corporation's been pinballing from problem to problem, including its lacking control over Gary Lineker's social media accounts and its disastrous revamps of shows like Football Focus and A Question of Sport that have totally alienated viewers. To take a look at some of the BBC's disastrous decisions, I'm joined by Ali Ross, TV critic from The Sun, with apologies to you, Ali, for bringing up Derby instead of finding some much more obscure Scottish reference in football. But, you know, they're not playing a blinder, are they, BBC Sport?
No, they're not, Mike. When we were watching television back in the 70s, they had access to all the great sporting events, and they also had great professional broadcasters like Des Lynam, Frank Boff, and now they've got neither of those two things, which wouldn't be an insurmountable problem in itself, but they've also got this obsessive desire to hit a youth audience, allied to the fact it's being captured by the woke tendency, and it's fatal for sports broadcasting, because instead of getting the best and the best sports, you get this very skewed version of football that isn't even the priority for them now. It's the agenda that is put before the actual sport. And it's fatal for shows like A Question of Sport, which has had to be shelved. And I think probably Football Focus will go next. But you also saw recently what it did to Sports Personality of the Year, which used to be a fun event. It was kind of awkward and cheesy. But you had Alex Scott quoting Maya Angelou at the end of a 12-minute segment on the Lionesses.
Yeah, who does she play for? I mean, what's the point, you know?
Doncaster Bell's left back, I think she was.
This is the thing. And I mean, also the piece that I was reading today, which was quoting quite a lot of Des Lynam's wisdom on this matter, and whatever you may think of Des Lynam, he was fantastic as a broadcaster.
One of the greatest ever broadcasters.
Yeah. Tremendous.
Because you listen when he speaks.
Exactly right. And he said, like many people, that the BBC made massive errors, like getting rid of Sue Barker, like trying to just hire people who are good sports people rather than good broadcasters. And they reminded us, basically, of when Sports Personality of the Year back in 1988, when Ben Johnson had been done for taking drugs in Seoul. By coincidence, I actually chased him down the JFK Expressway in New York. I'm
guessing you didn't catch him.
I didn't catch him, no, but I was in a taxi and he was in a car. But they presented Linford Christie with a cup of ginseng tea as he walked onto the stage, which, of course, had been the reason why Linford Christie had failed a drug test, because he said he'd had some ginseng tea. Just funny. I mean, you're laughing at the memory of it.
It's fantastic. You just wouldn't get that anything that day, would you? It's a bit cheesy, but it's also really left field.
Yeah.
And it's putting the issue front and centre. But the problem with people like Alex Scott is she's not a trained journalist, so she'd never ask the right question.
No.
Something like that would never occur to her.
No, and you've now got BBC Sport dominated clearly by Gary Lineker, and we talked the other week about the Wayne Rooney tweet, which BBC Sport put out, just sort of making fun, rather, benignly, I thought, of Wayne Rooney getting fired from Birmingham, getting him dressed up as a Peaky Blinder. I mean, they could have done worse. And Gary Lineker orders them to take the tweet down. They now take the tweet down. Yeah,
it's the tail wagging the dog. Lineker is out of control. I'm assuming, I'm also hoping they're going to put him out to grass after the Euros in the summer.
Yeah.
Because this situation can't continue where one guy clearly considers himself bigger than the whole of the BBC, and they've kind of taken him at his word and played along as if he is.
Well, it's almost as though there's people sitting in the BBC going, oh, my God, what if Gary leaves? What will we do then? We'll have nobody.
Well, the other thing about all these sportsman-turned-presenters is they can only do one thing.
Yeah.
Gary Lineker is not a multitasker. If you gave him rugby or golf or anything, he'd flounder. If you take a great pro like Jim Rosenthal, give him any sport, even motor racing, which he didn't know anything about, and I think he'd be the first to admit before he did it.
Right.
And within 2 weeks, because he's a trained journalist and a broadcaster, he is the master of that subject. Lineker just can't do that.
No.
So I'm not sure why they're so besotted with the guy.
Yeah, I don't know either, because I think there must be just some ludicrous kind of sort of almost homage that they feel they have to pay because he was this great player for England. I mean, he wasn't really even that great for England. I know that, you know, he was a successful footballer and he went and played in Barcelona and he went and played in Japan and he's a very smart guy and all of that for a footballer, but a smart guy for a footballer, basically.
Yeah, that's like having the best body mass index at the World Darts Championship, isn't it?
Exactly right. Or the one-eyed man in the land of the blind, as we sometimes say. But, I mean, do you think... I mean, I do wonder whether they've already told him they're going to have to let him go at the end of this year, at the end of the season, and he's just kind of finessing it somehow.
Yeah, he just does seem to be out of control. And it's the ingratitude of it, because the BBC took him when he was a very raw...
Yeah.
And broadcaster's too grand a term for what he was, and persisted with him, as they're doing with Alex Scott now, and turned him into something. He's not a great he's not up there with Jeff Stelling or anyone like that. He can do the job, but now he seems intent on sacrificing the whole BBC for his own ego and his political agenda, which probably matches the political agenda of a lot of people at the BBC, but it defies the whole purpose of the BBC, which is to be neutral.
Yeah. If
you haven't got that, it ceases to have a point.
No, I mean, if they can't even do sport neutral, I mean, I'm afraid, you know, the game is up, it would seem.
Yeah.
Ali, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Ali Ross, the Sun's TV critic, on the woeful state of BBC sport. It really is in a bad way, and it ain't getting any better.